Hi, good morning, everybody. And for those of you who don't know me, I used to be a builder till 2024. And then Samaila found some better builders. So I don't build anymore, I just speak and talk. That's my current vocation. But of course, I am going to be talking to a guest here, Aig, who certainly doesn't need any introduction, right? I mean, it would be very, very wrong of me to even try and introduce Aig, so I shall not do it. However, what I will say is that 10 years back, when I joined AFC, I had been told that AFC is a company that's going places, and there are some really strong board members out there who will eat you for breakfast and probably throw you away for lunch if you don't behave. And Ike was one of those gentlemen I was warned on. That here is this pioneering, entrepreneurial, first generation, highly successful, strong leader looking at greater things for Africa. And there I was, Sanjeev, going to go and work under his watch. But what I instead found, and that's the point I want to get to, because we all know that leadership requires strong personalities, vision, dreams, what have you. But we also know that to create sustainability, as they say, ideas create, but values protect. Now, my question to you, Ike, is, when I first met you, I found you to be an extremely observant, highly diligent, very detailed, and so patient with everything that was happening. And that told me that here is a leader who is just not leading for his own dreams, but taking people along with him. Ike, how did you balance in the early days that dream, that ambition, that fervor that you had with the softness of leadership that creates the values?
Thank you, Sanjeev. And congratulations, Samaila, 19 at 19. It's like 19 billion at 19 years old. It's incredible, actually, what AFC has achieved since its founding. And Your Excellency, President Obasanjo, who was at the very kernel of that founding, it's good to have you in this room. I think I will stick around to listen to your pearls of wisdom. I always get a thrill when he speaks. And perhaps I'll have the opportunity in this next 20 minutes to tell you why. So, I noticed something during the conversation that I met around this vision thing. And about the size of a vision. And I understand exactly what was being said from this part of the room because I'm entrepreneurially driven as well, and also very much a believer in building institutions. But I think really the key thing about vision is the attractiveness of it. The scale of it always sounds big thereafter. But for me, it never really started with let's build the biggest bank in Africa or anything like that. It was simply around a customer value proposition, which was to say that, look, by virtue of the fact that we exist, and that's access, okay, we will point to literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of customers, big and small, who would rather die if we were not there anymore. Yeah. And it had to be in what we were doing. So our customer value proposition had to change the lives of those we served. It was as simple as that. It wasn't about just being fast or being safe as a financial institution. Literally, if we served you, your life had to improve as a result. And that's this customer value proposition thing. Now, so I think the first thing to note, given that, I want to focus my comments on AFC. AFC is in the business of capital. You're in the business of managing capital in such a way that it transforms lives. Simple. And your vision in that respect is what attracts the capital to you. But very importantly is that governance is what retains that capital. Execution is what compounds it. So vision attracts the capital, governance retains the capital, and execution compounds it. And I remember very early in AFC's, AFC is a wonderful story of public and private partnership working. And into this room came a number of shareholders, including government, largely the central bank, and banks. And then, of course, some private industrialists. And we contributed what was, I can't remember the sum. 1 billion, was it up to it, just under a bit? Okay, yeah. $1.1 billion. Now, I'll tell you, there was a big temptation for all who contributed, of course, aside from the central bank, that, look, you've contributed a significant sum of money, how do you get your return on capital? And of course, the institutions would say, lend or unlend to my favorite project. In some instances, it was a risky deal, not going well, come on, refinance it, and so on. And I think that those early steps around governance, about saying that AFC is not going to be the place where you refinance your credit. AFC is not going to be the place where an industrialist who has shares is going to get expansion finance. No. Those fundamental no's, I think, account for your risk rating today. I guess that's what you're alluding to.
Yeah, it's about values protecting, right?
But I think more important, of course, is the growth. And, I talked about this customer value proposition thing. When you think about what a business does and what good businesses do, you know what they do? They very simply understand that set of activities, tasks, and so on that enable you deliver that customer value proposition. That's what people seek to scale when they talk about scale, to understand it, to be able to repeat it, to standardize it, and be able to repeat it. If you started maybe 1 a day, you want to do 1 million a day, and so on. That's the execution bit. And I think that certainly from a regional standpoint, AFC has become a wonderful execution machine. Congratulations.
I still need to bring you back to your story.
Okay.
Right? And I know that you being a pioneer investor in AFC, that's a story in its own right. And as you correctly said, that the sustainability of any organization is in its values, and those values seems to have been instilled from day one. But going back to your story, young person, not coming from a business family per se, first generation entrepreneur, getting into a sector which till that point in time had many challenges in Nigeria. How did you go through the whole complexity aspect of it? It's not just about financing, it's about systems, it's about regulations, it's about managing stakeholders. I like the one comment you made, which I think Gagan said as well, and that is, many a time, a business is started because you're trying to solve a problem. That's where it starts. But then, as you're trying to solve a problem, you run into so many problems, right? And that's what I want you to talk about a little bit, the navigation part.
I wrote a book. It's called Leaving the Tarmac. I urge you to read it because I have limited time. But in that book, I said, look, before Access, going to buy Access, I worked in Guarantee Trust Bank. Fascinating story of entrepreneurial banking, and I was part of a group of people who, at the point in time, created maybe one of Nigeria's top 2 banks from nothing. Now, along that journey comes the shift to a return to democracy. And with the return to democracy, President Obasanjo becomes our president. And a series of changes take place in Nigeria as a result of his leadership. Not just in Nigeria, in Ghana, these changes were taking. I think Africa was gifted at that time. You had change in Ghana, you had change in South Africa, you had change in Nigeria. And there was this wave, democratization was great for Africa and probably propelled the Africa Rising story that we heard of. Now, in GTB, one of the things I was responsible for was actually, managing government and managing government relationships, etc. And because there's a great level of empowerment there, I was in the room with CEOs, bank CEOs, other CEOs who were interacting with President Obasanjo and his team. And what was clear to me was that we had a situation where government policy and public sector leadership was where you want it to be. When you speak about Singapore, when you speak about a lot of countries around the world that have made this move from either third world to first world, or the level of advancement that we all look for, it can't be done without government. Yep. Okay? It can't be done without government. And, I mean, I had a front row seat. I'm a child of civil servants, and I have seen government work all my life. And I could sense that something was happening. This thing was different. And it was important to me to be there entrepreneurially, not just running a bank as a team, okay, having skin in the game. So where am I going to? It's all about timing. Sometimes timing is accidental. I think the vision thing is really when it's not accidental, that you're in the right place at the right time because you saw something, right? You see something. What did I see? I saw that Nigeria was going to transform. I saw that if I missed this one, not that I couldn't own a bank, not that you wouldn't build a bank, but you wouldn't have the type of wind behind your sails that was going to occur in Nigeria at the time. And so timing was everything. We had to buy the bank at that time, and which we did. And for us, we kind of studied what the opportunities were, where things were going. And I'll give you a simple example. In our conversations, I heard him say that he saw GSM technology as key to Africa's transformation. I'm talking about President Obasanjo. That he would do anything to ensure that GSM technology was properly introduced into Nigeria. He had the right understanding of what makes a telecoms industry thrive in a country. And he did the right things. One, you have the right type of regulator, staffed and led by the right type of people. You have the right type of enablement laws for it. Probably most importantly, you have a very credible auction system. The first one must be very credible, and it attracts at least one major player. And if you read the story, he did it. Now, Access Bank. This auction took place in 2001. We bought Access Bank in 2002. We focused tremendously on this sector. Remember that our balance sheet at the time when we bought the bank was less than Aliko's credit card limit, okay? And I mean, our foreign currency balance sheet. But yeah, we were big guys, top guns in GTB. So we knew all the emerging players in the telecoms. We knew MTN, we knew their leadership and so on. But we didn't have any balance sheet to lend anything to them now. And so we were not part of the syndication or the syndicate that gave them the financing to get their license, etc. And the rule was that you couldn't bank them, MTN, for instance, unless you were part of the syndicate. Okay, no wahala. So we talk about value chains. We said, okay, no problem. How are you going to generate your revenue? There are no malls in Nigeria to sell airtime out of. All this, there was no virtual airtime, it was cards and so on. And so we came up with this idea. We said, we'll work with you, we'll train entrepreneurs, we'll find there was a certain type of Nigerian, male, female, between 28, 35, we would make them your distributors. We would put your airtime in our vault. These distributors will come in the morning, take airtime, go, sell it, come back, trained by us, etc. Okay? Guess what? Okay? In 1 year, we were MTN's largest collecting bank. We were still, the money was being swept, we collected it was being swept to the syndicate of banks. Now, their airtime, what is airtime? It's transmitted through a series of base stations. Rolling out these base stations wasn't easy. Their first, guess was that let's use original equipment manufacturers, let's use construction companies and so on. The bigger they were, when they went into the bush, sometimes they won't come out. So they said, I'm not doing this anymore. And so, again, we came up with this concept called a cell site in a warehouse. Literally, we understood the supply chains and we created this trade finance system, huge warehouses in Lagos. We put in those warehouses steel, we put in those warehouses generators, put it with the cables, etc. And we again trained set of people who have construction, engineering backgrounds, ages, and so on. You get the contract. We guarantee to MTN you will deliver. You take 5 cell-site components from our warehouse, go, you install it, and this is how we finance the rollout. 2 years after, Access Bank, biggest telecom bank in Nigeria. That's our story.
Great. I've got it. I think the one thing you noticed is the passion, right? Right? And I think that is what separates a leader from the rest of us, right? That's that passion and the way he was relating that story and that experience from all those years back to us, right? Now, you talk about timing, Ike. Firstly, I'm very mindful of the MC because he's looking at the time. But more importantly, one final question before we wrap up, talking about timing, sticking to that theme. We have been hearing, the MC talked about it earlier, about Africa's time being now, right? Now today we know, and Samaila talked about choices, we know that it's an increasingly multipolar world. Prime Minister Carney used the word rupture, which was quite a severe word to use. Where do you think Africa's positioning should be? Because to me, it's the greatest opportunity for us, given that the so-called solidarity of the West is rupturing. There is an opportunity for us. Could you just share your thoughts on that? And we will wrap up after that.
Thank you. If you read Carney's, or listened to Carney's speech, he described Canada as a middle country.
Middle power. Middle power.
No. He didn't say middle power. He said a middle country. Country in the middle. Okay. And he spoke about these countries in the middle facing existential threats. The countries in the middle. Canada's GDP is $2.2 trillion. Africa's GDP is 2.7. 54 countries. So as he was talking, I was saying, okay, where are we? If Canada is panicking, right, what message sendest thou to Africa? Panic. Oh. Now, multilateralism, they come from the same states. The gentleman whose name I will mention, and I think he had a relationship with President Obasanjo, given that they came from the same state, and Nigeria seems to produce great people from that state. Fela sang a song, Beast of No Nation. Go and listen to it again. And the thrust of that was that, who is multilateralism really for? Mm-hmm. And Carney spoke about Havel and the truth of the power and the powerless and speaking truth. The reality is, for me, that multilateralism was meant to work actually for the weak. Mm. That was the promise, that we recognize that you have hegemonies. We recognize that we have strong countries. But these countries will come together and there will be a set of rules that will protect you, the weak. Mm. And to a certain degree, right, take the hypocrisy out of it, it worked. If you dismantle the WTO, you dismantle the UN, and all these rules by which we interact, how does Nigeria, and let's think Nigeria, okay, change and pivot in this new reality? It's not going to be easy. Mm. And if it's not going to be easy for Nigeria, what about the smaller countries? Mm. Our neighbors, I don't want to mention any names because you guys may be recording and send it to a friend who may be a president. So the next 5-10 years are going to be very difficult. And leadership is not going to be easy at all. I'm not sure whether we should approach it with this sense that there's a great opportunity for Africa. I'm a very, very, very pragmatic person. I, however, believe that we have to approach it with this sense that if at any point in time, like Fela sang, the scales should fall off your eyes, now is that time. If we don't, there is no time, we can't make mistakes in this context. There are no safety nets in this context. There is no big brother in this context. And therefore, the issues of leadership, who leads, what decisions, we cannot afford anymore to default to the mediocre. That is what will allow us thrive. So for Africa, this is no time for subsidy, no time for mediocre, no time for second chance. We have to put our best leaders forward, we have to put our best feet forward, and then go and fight like mad in a very, very challenging new world order.
Because yeah. And rightly, we will end on that note, but I think what you emphasized is that we are entering into a serious era of unpredictability, right? We didn't have a perfect system, but we had certain amounts of predictability around which we operated. And that is rupturing. I think that's pretty much what you were saying, right? But you have the last word.
Now, there are two things that are going to make or break Africa, to my mind. One is that we need leaders in the public sector who will pursue impact, recognizing that impact cannot come without trade-offs. And we need leaders in the private sector who will pursue growth and jobs, but do so with a sense of responsibility and accountability. And let me make it simple. We have a refinery project not too far from here. We all know, we should know, that if, having built this refinery, if we all circle around this refinery as Nigerians, as Africans, okay, right? And it's not just about refinery. We can create 100 billion, in the next 3-4 years, $100 billion economy per annum. Just add 100 billion to our GDP straight, okay? Right? Just down this road. I'm talking about not just a refinery that works and that fixes the oil and gas value chain for Africa. I'm talking about a site where you can have factories with power. We can build new cities that, can house 1 million people in Lagos with the right type of housing. We can literally rebuild Nigeria's Lagos economy in the next 3-4 years. But it's going to take leaders who are going to say, look, let's forget who wins if we all win.
Yep.
It's going to take you and I, as private sector leaders in capital, to bet big on real estate projects like Deji has described, doing things not simply because there is a cost of capital reality or that we must meet, but because in the long term, the real economy benefit will far outweigh this short-term cost of capital thing that we think of.
Thank you.
That is what, at the end of this retreat, I hope Sir Amaila will come and tell me, this one is just down the road, we will fix it. Thank you.
Thank you.